I just came inside after shoveling 8 inches of snow.
A little different than all.
I was talking to my dad. So he went back to Ethiopia after many years of working, but specifically in the West for 27 years almost. He's been working all his life, probably since he could count money. He was a barkeeper for my grandpa, witnessed a lot of violence, a lot of abuse. He was parentified or adultified very early. But how has it been feeling, like going back to Ethiopia and like, you know, connecting with old friends and stuff like that? And this is not the first time we had this conversation, but he basically was telling me how the culture that he remembers in Ethiopia is very different. And it's not like this like old people getting old, and like obviously there's like that too. My dad is in his late 50s. Like, my dad doesn't really drink. He doesn't like nightlife because he's seen nightlife before he was a teenager. Because of that, I think he has associations that are not great. Because of that, I think he just has no desire to do that, because I think you go either, you know, in one of the extremes. Either you go very hard and you become like, you know, a drug user. Nightlife become your escapism in some way. For my dad, it became the other thing. He also had his religious deconstruction. And he was telling me that it's been hard to reconnect with old friends, not because he doesn't have access to them. He does, because he has a lot more time, because he's retired technically, which is like a privilege on its own, right? But my dad has been working all his life that he doesn't even have time to appreciate and feel grateful, because the conditions of his environment, the systems at hand, have basically made him I don't know what the word is, very nihilistic. He's a writer, he's a philosopher in a lot of ways. He has really deepened that part of himself a lot in the last couple of years, in the last 10 years especially, and I've seen that growth. And one of the things that he's realized is like he's deconstructed religion in a way that has layers. My dad's family are Eritrean, but they are people that like grew up and built a home for themselves in Ethiopia. But my dad is also like culturally Ethiopian, right? He speaks 3 languages. He has been a second culture kid, a third culture kid since before even he came to the US and was in the West, which is a layer I don't think we talk about enough. It was so interesting to talk about this with my father, because we don't agree on a lot of things, because, you know, parents be parenting and like humans be humaning. But I think one of the things that has been consistent is his deconstruction and his like awakening that he doesn't see in his friends and his community has made him feel isolated. Like, I thought he would have these beautiful experiences going to Ethiopia and like have, you know, like a resurgence of community that he's been missing here, because you don't even really know your neighbors here unless you really try and have the energy and you're not working 7 times a week. So he's just basically like, to be honest with you, like it's really hard for me to show up as my core identity self, which he's gotten more comfortable with, which is like someone who's deconstructed Orthodox religion, which is the religion that he grew up with, and you know, his family is like very Catholic. So the culturally Orthodox fundamentalist religiously they were Catholics. My grandpa was a Catholic man, and then he also grew up around a lot of Muslim people. So there is this like standing contradiction that he like witnesses continually. Basically, it's like, yeah, I don't really see people, and when I see people, it feels like I have to put on a mask. And I think he also talked about how even sitting with someone, it feels very different now because of these technological interruptions that happen. Like you have chat, which is basically like this thing that people chew. It's like a numbing substance. People kind of use it as a way to socialize with each other. My dad's not a big chat person, but he like likes the fact that it's like a social like glue. And so when people like invite him, because he has a lot of Muslim friends from Harar, that's like their main way of sitting and like talking, because, you know, men, masculinity, and all of those things. I don't even know what this video is about. Anyway. So he was talking about how he just feels like even in those conversations, everybody's on their phone, because a lot of people have switched to smartphones. Nobody's really having those like T9, are they called? Yeah, like the Nokia phones or anything. Like, phones are not really functionality anymore. They're entertainment, they're escapism. So when you're sitting with someone, like here, there is some cultural context for like, you don't really look at your phone while you're with someone. Like it's a considered rude, and even that awakening happened I don't know, the last couple of years, like, and like now it's a lot more like obvious. But in Ethiopia, it like is a completely different cultural context. So people will be like on Facebook or like TikTok or like Instagram, like while they're sitting with you, they're like catching up with you, they're you know, chewing chat, playing, like, you know, talk about this thing, and sometimes it's quiet. He said like there's dead silence, and I've witnessed it. My mom still lives there and my sisters still live there, and I go there every so often, and it just like broke my fucking heart, because I was like, I knew this was gonna be hard. And like with my dad, he not only is he having a deconstruction around a religion, that feels like a big part of him, right? Like he's like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god, like this is a tool of colonialism in all the ways. And like, you know, obviously you can hold certain parts of it, and like, yeah, how deconstruction of religion works, especially if you grew up in a very religious environment, even culturally. My father is he's a talker, but he also is someone who is selective, right? Like he doesn't just like talk to talk or fill space. You can talk to him about everything from like global economics, like issues, to like aid and its benefits and its con, gender, sexuality, sex work. Like my dad could go everywhere. There's no like guardrails in our conversations. That's one of the things like I feel like very privileged, and like having this type of like he shaped a lot of my, you know, early childhood conceptualization and politic, and like the way I show up in the world. I have definitely gone further because of other thinkers and other people in my community, but like my dad shaped a big part of that, alongside with my mom and my community and all that. But my dad was like a big part because he gave me a lot of thematic language. He's able to be his core self, like not obviously 100%, you can't really be 100% except even with yourself sometimes, but like he is his most self with me and my sister. Like we can talk about everything for hours, and he's like, okay, I'm done talking, and like there's no like hard feelings, there's no, you know, whatever, we kind of just like stop, right? But I think that type of context, because my dad started to become himself, like not put as much of a mask. He's like, I don't really want to have this conversation anymore, or not trying to be rude, because he's still like a very likable guy, but like especially with other people that he grew up with, it's more like he is showing up as his authentic self, and he was basically explaining how that has not been going really well. He writes like 80-90 pages in one sitting, and it's wild. It's a lot of deconstruction stuff, a lot of philosophical stuff, right? And a lot of these are like handwritten. He talks about like that's how he processes thoughts, like, you know. And I think there is a layer of people that are losing their community in this way because they're not even sure where they should fit in. And it made me think about how, you know, I do that in my own, but I think for us, access to those communities is a lot easier. Not easier, but like it's accessible. For my dad, who is in his late 50s, an immigrant person who speaks 3 languages, but he came later in this country, but also kind of early enough that he's not considered like, you know, fully East African because he's American now, but also he's not American because if he goes to like a fucking Walmart, people will be like, can you even speak English? Even though he's been here for 20 plus years. So those layers of identities and nuances, because we're human, we don't really take the time to really realize and understand. The only reason I know is because we talk about it often, we deconstruct, we yap about everything. But even for me, there's parts of it that I get surprised by, including the conversation from today. And it just made me like, sad, I guess. I don't really have like this big like realization or recognition. It's more like it just made me sad. Like that's identity or cultural heritage like homogenization that happens as a result of like social media, internet, things moving fast, ageism, capitalism, devaluing elders, like, yeah. And yeah.